Yeah, unfortunately, Dean has not been able to make it across the sea, so I'll be filling in for him on this talk today. I'll be speaking to you about the growth and productivity of New Zealand grown coast redwood. So basically having a look at what's actually happening down there in New Zealand, and some of the science and research that industry and our scientific community has been cooperating on, looking to advance redwood as a commercial species in New Zealand. So my name's Paul Silcock. I'm with a small forest management company, New Zealand Forestry Limited. We're a consulting company, so we look after private forest owners, and I'm also the chairman of the SUCCOUR Action Group, which is a small collection of enthusiasts and commercial growers who are looking to cooperate to advance research and understanding of SUCCOUR in New Zealand.
Can everybody hear him in the back, or no? A little louder.
A little louder, and apologies about the accent. So I'll just hit me up if nothing quite comes across. But yeah. So just a brief overview. I'll talk about the New Zealand forestry sector. Its dominance by Monterey pine or radiata pine. A brief history of coast redwood in New Zealand, and some of the more major research successes we've had over the last 10 years between industry and our research scientists, and then some of the ideas of where we want to be moving to in the next 10 to 20 years. So this is New Zealand, the North Island and the South Island. Very original names there. So this is our commercial plantation estate. I know plantation's not a very well regarded word over here, so it's our tree farms or our commercial forests concentrated up here in the west coast of Northland there, mainly established for sand dune stabilisation following conversion from native forest cover. The central plateau here, this is a volcanic plateau, so mainly pumice, sandy soils, no good for farming, so I was put into forestry. And on the east coast here, very young soil profile, so very high erosion following deforestation from the native forest cover, so that's the main kind of spread of our commercial forest estate. And in the South Island, a bit more scattered, and our Douglas fir resource down here in the southern part. So it's our third largest export earner. It's a very important industry in New Zealand after dairy and sheep and beef. Approximately 6% of the land cover is in plantation forest. About 25% is in indigenous forest cover, which is reserved. So it's very different to here. There's no interaction between indigenous forest and commercial forest. You lock that one up and you use your commercial plantations on the other hand. And it's very significant dominance of Pinus radiata, so a monoculture. About another 5% is Douglas fir, and then there's other species, cypress, Cupressus lusitanica, macrocarpa, eucalyptus, and then more recently coast redwood. So we're up to around 8,000 hectares now, and I guess that's what's significant about that is the age profile of it. So it's all, the oldest of that would be 15 years, so it's a very immature resource. But just looking back at that resource, as our indigenous forest was being cut down, very similar pattern to here in California. Our indigenous people, the Māori, they arrived about 1,000 years ago, and New Zealand was about 95% forested. They took that down to about 75% with some fires and things, and then the Europeans took about 150 years to get that down to 25. So we started running out of wood. We thought, well, we'd better try some new species. So we pretty much came over here, got a whole lot of softwoods and trialled them, and for those reasons, redwood was deemed to be too sensitive for New Zealand. So it was mainly issues with weeds at establishment. But on the other hand, the raging success of Monterey pine probably cast a shadow on redwood somewhat. So there are pockets of 60, 80, 90-year-old trees in New Zealand which are doing very well and are magnificent stands, but it was deemed too site sensitive until Dr. Bill Libby, Soper Wheeler, our company New Zealand Forest Limited, and others tackled these issues: site selection, good nursery practice, so solving problems, issues with botrytis, good establishment techniques, so keeping a seedling weed-free for the first 2 years. We started getting some good survivals, and the site sensitivity was a bit more understood. So, and these the SUCCOUR action group was formed to bring together interested parties, and cooperated with Scion Research to get a research plan and look into the future and see how to promote redwood and start getting it out there. So if you go to a corporate New Zealand forest owner who's been growing Pinus radiata for 60 years and gets his nice 5% return on investment every year for his shareholders, and you try to encourage him to diversify a bit, they'll want to know, well, where do we grow it? Is there any particular provenances or genotypes that we should be establishing? And can we produce these high-value timber grades that they do in the States? So is it going to have the density? Is it going to have the durability? Is it going to look the same? So how do we manage it to achieve that? So in this talk, we'll just have a quick look at some of the research that we've carried out to answer some of those questions. So where to grow coast redwood? So this is our permanent sample plot network across New Zealand. Not too sure if it comes out very well, but the idea of it is that there's a scattering of plots in some of the older stands, which we've got a good 30 or 40 year measurement history with. And then there's these younger stands, better sited plantings that we've got, 5, 10 or 15 year measurement data behind. So we're not fully representing the sites that are suitable for coast redwood, but it's what we've got to work with. So how do you predict site productivity from a limited number of sites and growth information? You basically piggyback the much better funded radiata research and get their models, and then stick your data in the back end. And so we're utilising empirical modelling, so multiple measurements to get these growth profiles over time, and then we're utilising climate data and environmental factors and GIS layers, as Pascal was talking about before, using kriging to get these layers where you don't have data points across the whole country. And we've come up with a site index measurement here. So you're going from site indexes of 50 down to less than 15, and the 400 index is a volume prediction index. So for a reference regime, so if you've got a 40-year rotation where you're ending up with a final crop stocking of 400 stems per hectare, then this is the potential productivity of that site. So, an average site in New Zealand would be 35 to 40 cubic metres per hectare per year, and so that's these light orange sites around here. So, and these models, the factors which are driving the majority of this, the most significant variables are summer moisture levels, average rainfall, summer vapor pressure deficit, and soluble phosphorus in the soil. And then there's aspect and soil depths and things like that, but about 80 something percent of the variation is explained by these surfaces. So that's a very useful tool for just having a look at where you may want to grow redwood. And the other question is, redwoods are we're very excited about redwood because of its ease of propagation. If we see a nice tree, we cut it down and test it and then get the cuttings and propagate from it. So it's extremely rapid turnaround compared to seed orchards, which we're used to. So the SUCCOUR Provenance trial, which I'm sure you all know a lot more about than I do, a range of 90 sites-ish from north to south, and so 180, I think there's 170 in our SUCCOUR trials, which there's actually about 11 of them which are in good condition and we're still able to measure. So that's fully replicated, 8 replicates of the 182 clones, and these two are the oldest, these two sites here, and they've been fully assessed a couple of years ago for growth, form, heartwood content and density of the heartwood. And we're also working on durability as well now. So as the remainder of these SUCCOUR trials get big enough, we'll be able to extend that assessment of the genetic by environment interaction. So this is the results. Dean published this this year, fresh off the press. So basically what this is telling us, that between these two sites, which are both medium quality sites, your relationship between diameter, density and heartwood percentage is very strongly correlated to the genotype, and within between both sites as well, there's a very strong correlation between diameter, density and heartwood percentage. So it's good news for us who, if we take a clone on one site and we measure its properties, if we plant it on a similar productivity site, we can be pretty confident that it's going to do the same thing, which is an important step for us. And the extension of this into some of the more limiting SUCCOUR sites will provide a bit more interesting information for us. But so there's strong control for diameter, wood density and percentage of heartwood, and no noticeable provenance trends from north to south of the range. Wow. So yeah, that was very useful. And can we produce high quality timber grades? Will we be able to sell into the US market? Will any domestic New Zealand customers want to buy New Zealand grown redwood? So we did a soaring study on a stand which we felt best represented where we were heading to with our management practices. So 38 years old, about 400 stems per hectare, pruned and thinned. And so 50 logs, they were sawn up and then rebuilt, and a sawing simulation model was built out of that as well. But the end result is that of those higher value lumber grades, clear all heart, clear heart, clear commons, heart B and heart con, we were getting some pretty reasonable outputs there. Grading this timber, deciphering the redwood grading standards out of your booklet, that was an interesting process. So we took it from however many pages it was down to 8, so we're definitely generalising compared to what you guys do, but yes, we can produce those high value timber grades, and the wood properties of that were also tested, and that's in this publication down here. So similar shrinkage and density values, and again this large variation in density between trees from seedling stands. So to summarise, there's a great potential for redwood in New Zealand, and that potential has been recognised by our corporate growers in general. There's a fairly tight-knit group of growers in New Zealand making up that 8,000 hectares, and we're all working together to kind of just chip away at those knowledge gaps to provide confidence for growers and to provide confidence for consumers as well. We want to be providing a consistent product at the end of the rotation, and yeah, I think there's another, the genetics by environment interaction, we're slowly getting there. So the Cousa collection is invaluable in New Zealand for explaining some of this variation and giving us confidence in our clonal propagation. So I've only got a couple minutes. I'm good. So where we're heading to next, if Dean was here, the impact of silvicultural regimes on productivity. So we've had a silvicultural traits trial going on for about 15 years looking at pruning and thinning response. That's data sitting there to be run. Comparison of productivity between New Zealand and Australia, that's another data set sitting there on Dean's desk. The performance of the Cousa Provenance trial over some more sites. We've got 4 more sites there sitting there ready to go. So Dean's got a lot to do, and we don't have enough money, but we'll get there. And Dean's also looking at this process-based modelling of redwood productivity, so really drilling into the drivers of that of productivity. I don't really understand it yet, but hopefully I get there. And also perhaps one of the most important things that's come up as of late is the ability to rapidly assess the natural durability of New Zealand grown redwood. So in the past we've relied on graveyard tests, which can take up to 15 years to figure out how durable a piece of wood is. And using near-infrared spectroscopy, we were able to do this in, well, by the time you process the samples, you know, it's a much more rapid turnaround. So that's another exciting piece of research we'll be talking about shortly. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Good. Next talk, I thought maybe our next conference can be over there in New Zealand.
Oh yeah,
right? Yeah.
You're welcome.
All right. Any questions? Quick questions, Jim?
Did you find a correlation between the amount of heartwood and the pruning?
No, not in the Cousa trial. That will hopefully come out of the silviculture traits trial, which was more of a pruning, testing pruning intensities and thinning intensities.
Your percent heartwood,
Yeah.
I gathered from that, seems to be higher than my experience with that same age of second growth redwood here.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it was the grade you were using or how you were doing it, but I was just wondering if slowing down that growth produced more heartwood. I think on that stem, on that part of the stem.
Yeah, mapping heartwood internally, like when you're building those logs back from the soaring study, is we tried to build a map of the heartwood, and it was just so variable we couldn't model it.
So I guess one caution is that in modeling the heartwood, check with some of the folks that have the data here that have done pruning, and you might be able to check it. Time for one more quick question, and then we'll get ready for next talk. Dee.
My memory says that in 2011 there was a woman from China describing, in fact, she had a book about growing redwoods in China. Are there other places in the world that we know that are growing redwoods?
Yeah, so there's a Cousa trial in France and one in Chile, but Jim, you'll know more about that than I. Commercially,
You said I think it was a Cousa collection in France, or some in Chile, Portugal, Spain, and I think some people went to Thailand.
So there's tests, those same Cougar clonal province tests in many different countries, but no one is exploring it at a commercial scale like is happening here. That's maybe one of the big distinctions too. But thank you so much. Thanks for filling in for Dean. And we're sorry he couldn't be here. Paul, that was great. Thank you so much.